This is American Thought Leaders, and I'm Yanya Kellick. Right now I'm sitting down with Nicole Neily, President of Speech First. Nikki, great to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
How long have you been coming to CPAC?
I have been coming, I think, since 2007, so it's been a long time.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a relative newbie here as it
Yeah,
comes.
it's quite a spectacle.
A ton of energy.
Yes. Yeah, you're going to be really tired on Sunday.
So, your area, of course, is free speech on campus.
Yep.
There's a ton of young people here from campuses all over America, and I would hope a ton of free speech. Tell me a bit about how that plays into what's happening at CPAC.
Sure. No, it's great to be among a group of students who know their rights, who care, and are engaged. What my organization, Speech First, works on is we are primarily litigation focused. We sue universities that have violated students' free speech rights. And so being here is, some of it is just raising awareness about what your rights are and how you can fight back. In a way, talking to the students here is sort of, it's almost not my target audience, because what we are primarily concerned with is chilling and self-censorship. There are so many different ways on college campuses today that schools try to discourage students from expressing viewpoints that they don't like. It's almost, I think of it as death by a thousand cuts. There are free speech zones, there are speech codes, there are bias response teams, and so universities are in a position where they can pick winners and losers. And sadly, it often ends up being students who have religious viewpoints, who have conservative viewpoints, who support Israel, who support Taiwan. And we want to tell students that you don't have to take it. There are ways to fight back because your rights matter too.
You would think that universities would be the bastions of free speech today.
Yes,
right?
And that's why they get special tax treatment, because they're supposed to be. But sadly, they're not anymore. The window of acceptable discourse on most college campuses is very narrow, and it is shifting increasingly far left. Statistics from different polls show that students are self-censoring themselves at astonishing rates. They're not raising questions in class, they're not writing the papers they want, because they fear disciplinary action or they fear that they'll get bad grades.
So it's not just this direct censorship, like muzzling of a voice. There's this kind of, can you elaborate on that a little bit, this self-censorship, and how does litigating fit into that?
Sure. We think that there are policies like overbroad speech codes where students are put in a position where they don't know what they can be in trouble for. Often schools will ban things like offensive speech or hateful speech, and that's a really hard term to define, right? That's very much in the eye of the beholder. That saying something is offensive is like saying something is delicious. What is offensive to me as a limited government libertarian is very different than what somebody who runs a diversity and inclusion bureaucracy might define as offensive. And unfortunately, that kind of overbroadness, that kind of vagueness doesn't pass constitutional muster. Students need to know what they can and can't say. And often speech that is branded as offensive is constitutionally protected. So it's political speech, it's religious speech. And then we've seen a growing number of schools start to adopt policies called bias response teams, where students can actually anonymously report on their fellow classmates through a web portal on universities' websites. I can say, I saw Bob talking to Sue and he said a nasty word.
And you can get called in for something like that?
And you will get called into the dean's office to explain
anonymously?
yourself. Yes. And that, in my mind, that's terrifying. So if you can get in trouble for saying anything at any time, out of an abundance of caution, students refrain from saying anything that might be controversial.
Sounds like thought police to me.
Yeah, it's very creepy, and that's not a real educational experience in my mind. And students deserve better. You can think how expensive universities are these days: $50,000, $60,000, $70,000. It's unacceptable.
This is something that exists in American universities. Pardon my incredulity here.
Right.
But that, where does that exist even?
We have active
we
lawsuits.
Need to talk to them.
Right. We have litigation going against the University of Michigan. We sued them in May, and we sued the University of Texas in December. And hopefully we'll be filing another, 2 or 3 cases this year as well, because we really want to send a message to colleges and universities across the country. These kinds of violations can't stand. You cannot do this to students.
So is this? I'm trying to imagine the other side for a moment here. Presumably these types of rules are there to try to protect people from something.
Right.
And so maybe you see that, right? And
yeah.
But you probably don't agree with the methods. This method sounds to me,
right.
crazy. But what is it that they're trying to protect? And how can we protect that, or should it be protected?
Yeah, I think they are trying to, make people feel safe, make people feel welcome, and while that might be a laudable goal, this is not the right way to go about it. To have students report on each other anonymously, I think really undermines a sense of community on campus, first and foremost. But if there is speech on campus that you disagree with, that you may find distasteful, dislikeful, offensive, the best way to counter that is with more speech, to say, you know what, you shouldn't talk to him that way. I disagree with you, that minority group is not bad, but censoring something, really, it drives it underground, but it doesn't make it go away. And so this is, and students, frankly, the schools should be concerned with conduct. They shouldn't be concerned with policing speech, because free speech it's a bedrock principle of the country. And if you start to pick what can be said and what can't be said by who, I mean, we're undermining the principles of this country.
What about hate speech? I mean, things that are just very overtly, explicitly racist, overly, kind of attacking a particular group of people, demonizing them. What about stuff like that? Are there rules around that? Should there be?
And interestingly, the Supreme Court has held over and over again that, there is no legally acceptable definition of hate speech. And frankly, that definition has changed throughout the ages. Martin Luther King was put in jail in the 60s for violating a gag order. I mean, the New York Times v. Sullivan was litigated over the fact that a lot of people in the South didn't want the New York Times writing about the kinds of things that they were doing under Jim Crow. And so, what hate speech is much like offensive speech. It's very much in the eye of the beholder.
It could be turned around. If you're advocating for a ban there, it could be turned around to hurt you based on some other issue.
Right. And so, something that is offensive, distasteful, the Supreme Court has held you're allowed to say those things.
So we should be, basically you're saying all speech should be allowed, but the people that believe that speech is offensive should vigorously pursue talking about it. Talking
about it, fighting back, and showing why they're wrong. I mean, it's definitely go out, argue, show your point, make your point, and make them defend themselves. I mean, a lot of awful, hateful arguments don't hold water, but expose them to the light of day. Don't drive it underground.
So, is your main purpose here to expose your organization to the large amount of conservative students that are here at CPAC?
Yes, definitely. We want students to know that there are ways that they can push back against their schools. We're structured in a way that we're a membership association, and so students actually don't have to have their names attached to our lawsuits. It's a big disincentive to, even if you see something going on in your campus, to sue your school if you know it's going to be Nikki versus the University of Illinois. You're that person then. So your peers will shun you. You might get a tough grade. The school might retaliate against you in some surreptitious way that you're not aware of. You might not get a scholarship or a study abroad program invitation.
Right.
And so really the deck is stacked against students. No, it's David versus Goliath. So what we do is we file cases on behalf of our membership. So our cases are speech first versus the school.
I see. So you're not saying I'm going to help this particular person, even though that person might be the case example of a bad policy. So you're going after the policies.
Right, we're going after the policies, and our students are listed in the complaint as students A, B, C, D. And so there's a way that if they see injustice on their campus, they can fight back without facing the personal blowback of that.
Dragging their own names through the mud.
Right. And so
that's
just to raise
interesting because that makes them anonymous. Right?
They are anonymous, but often they want to say things that they face credible threat of discipline. If a student says, I believe that we should build a border wall. I believe that there are only two genders. And on a lot of college campuses, that's considered hateful. And if you can get in trouble for saying things that you believe in, you're not going to say it.
Right.
And so that's what we want to allow them to say the things that they believe in without getting in trouble.
I see, but it just struck me that maybe this is the mentality of having this kind of anonymous tip line.
I think if you're afraid of disciplinary action from your school for expressing a constitutionally protected opinion, I think that's different than anonymously tattletelling on a classmate.
I would fully agree with you. I would fully agree with you. Okay, well, gosh, I could go for hours on this topic. It's really, really fascinating. So, what is your this is probably obvious, but what is your best outcome from this weekend or these few days?
No, definitely to make students aware that there are ways that they can fight back against unconstitutional policies in their schools. We want to build a movement. We want to show students that there are strength in numbers, because our members are not only students, but they're also concerned citizens. And so there are tens, hundreds of thousands of Americans who believe in free speech and who want this to be fixed on college campuses, because our students deserve better, our country deserves better. What's happening on campus today isn't staying on campus, and so these schools cannot be allowed to act with impunity anymore. They must respect students' rights.
Do you have like a maybe most important case that you guys are fighting right now that you have in your mind that you'd like to share?
Well, the University of our case against the University of Michigan is the farthest along. We filed that in May, and we're currently before the Sixth Circuit. And that is challenging the University of Michigan's over vague speech code and their bias response team.
Right.
We're concerned the university has changed some of their policies after we filed our lawsuit and the Department of Justice weighed in, but we're concerned that, frankly, they're in a position where they can change the policies back with a stroke of a pen. And one of the original landmark campus free speech cases is actually from 1989, Doe v. Michigan. The school had bad policies in the books that were found unconstitutional, and now, 30 years later, we see them with bad policies on the books again, and so they have gone back.
So they changed them, but then they backpedaled.
Yes,
I see. Why are they so determined to do this, to enact these kind of
Your guess is as good as mine. Yeah,
policies?
but
It's ideologically.
Right. I mean, this was the line from The Big Lebowski. This aggression cannot stand, man. I mean, this is they can't be allowed to do this, and we want to send a message. And hopefully, other universities around the country will sit up and take note and realize that they should maybe start to walk back some of these policies if they have them on the books as well.
Nikki, thank you so much. I'm sure we'll have you back on the show sometime.
Thank you so much.
Look forward to it.